Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the session, Sustainability, Why Does It Still Make Sense? Part of the larger direction of turning challenges into progress. My name is Gregory Skinner. I'm VP of the Auto and Mobility side of Escalent, and I'm super happy to be here with our panelists today, Maria Neve, Reid Gustin, and Michael Taylor. I'm going to have everybody just take a really quick moment to introduce yourselves. I should probably introduce myself first. As part of the Auto and Mobility Group at Escalent, we do advisory and analytics for a host of companies throughout the segment in the commercial vehicle and in the passenger vehicle space. My day-to-day role is really getting on the ground with fleets, fleet managers, dealer principals, suppliers and vendors on the OEM side to really understand what's going on in the marketplace and do everything from new product development, positioning, strategy. And we've got a host of products here at Escalent, from Fleet Advisory Hub to Fleet Foresight, and the commercial vehicle report, where we report out all the things that are important to fleets, marketplace movement, and where the marketplace is headed. Let me start with Maria Neve and have her really quickly do an introduction about who she is and what she does on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic, Gregory. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm Maria Neve, VP of EFMC Services for Inspiration Mobility. Inspiration Mobility is an EV-focused fleet management company. We have built everything based upon electrification rather than ICE vehicles. I've been in fleet for about 25 years, worked with a number of different FMCs, as well as a number of OEMs. Currently, we provide everything from start to finish, cradle to grave, for customers in the fleet space wanting to run their fleets, including advisory services, as well as vehicle acquisition services and remarketing as well. And I am also currently the president of the NAFA Board of Directors, and I'm very involved in their efforts in Washington, D.C. to make sure that fleet management has a voice on Capitol Hill and in the current administration.
Oh, awesome. Your day sounds a little bit busy.
It's been a little busy, yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Reid Gustin, can I have you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks, Gregory. Hello, Reid Gustin, Director of Software Sales with PowerFlex. PowerFlex is a clean technology solutions company making the transition to carbon-free energy possible through a combination of green offerings, including solar, battery energy storage, and electric vehicle charging, as well as the adaptive energy management platform, PowerFlex X. We have over 50,000 chargers under management on our platform today. We're working with major universities, municipalities, schools, hospitals, commercial workplaces, and particularly fleets like DHL, PSE&G, and Amazon by providing reliable and robust EV charging solutions. As the Director of Software Sales, I kind of act as the subject matter expert for the PowerFlex X platform, providing support to our sales team. And currently I'm really focused on partnerships and integrations, trying to find ways to drive additional value for PowerFlex and our customers. I've been in the renewable energy and EV charging space for about 6 years, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. It's great to have you. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, Michael Taylor.
Thanks, Gregory. I'm a senior advisor at Hillstaffer, which is a government relations public affairs consultancy with more than 50 senior advisors. I cover a couple of different verticals, but I'm pretty much the transportation lead at Hillstaffer. And our key client there is NAFA, the Fleet Management Association, and we do the advocacy on behalf of them. I've been doing advocacy work for a little over 40 years. I started a long time ago as a junior staffer in both chambers of Congress. I've done, as I said, a number of verticals, but have done transportation work for over 20 years now. And I'm coming up on 10 years in fleet-specific transportation clients. And I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're happy to have you. And I'm actually really happy to have everybody on this panel because, if anything, we've got a really good breadth of knowledge and insight here. We've got everything from government relations all the way to, people on the ground actually implementing on the infrastructure and software side. Given that, maybe each of you could talk to me just really briefly about challenges that you see in the marketplace, whether they be robust or whether they be minor, that you think might impact where the commercial vehicle space is headed over the next 2 to 3 years. Like, is there anything that sort of stands out or that's notable right now?
I'll start off. What I am really seeing, there are two main challenges that I see come across from a commercial fleet perspective, and not just commercials, meaning commercial fleets, meaning the working vehicles, but also the sales fleets and any other fleet vehicle that would fall under that category. One, there's a pace mismatch. Tech policy and infrastructure is all evolving on different timelines. Customers often want to move faster than the timelines allow because you can only move as fast as the slowest piece of the puzzle. And the second one is the operational gray zone. Everyone's obsessing over vehicle orders, but the real complexity lives in what happens after those vehicles are deployed. Charging behavior, downtime, data management, and the biggest thing, culture change. This is not just swapping one vehicle for another. This is swapping one vehicle that has one propulsion system for a vehicle that has a completely different propulsion system. And it requires a little bit more high-touch work with drivers and fleet managers.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. Like, I like the idea that, we've got three sort of fundamentally different systems that are trying to interact to propel this whole marketplace forward. But this is sort of nothing new. Do we not face the same sorts of challenges whenever there's any sort of huge innovation in the marketplace or something new comes to bear? Like, how have we sorted this out in the past, but all of a sudden it's such a big challenge for us today? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I think it's more along the lines of we are in a different place as a country right now than we have been in the past. The kinds of changes that have happened in the past have been revolutionary. I mean, we could go all the way back to the Industrial Revolution and when steam engines were taken over by, but this particular moment in time is more difficult because of external influences, not just surrounding the sustainability space and fleet, but external influences that are influencing the global society. And it is we are more divided than ever. It is more difficult to have conversations and get to a point of where we can meet in the middle. And I think sometimes good pieces of information, good ideas are lost in that. And we have to work harder to overcome those.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe, Michael, that's the perfect segue into the challenges that you face as an advocate.
Yeah, I was definitely figuring that was the logical transition, and I think it is correct. Another big difference that I would say here is I really don't believe it's an understatement to say that when it comes to the laws and the regulatory framework that we have at the federal and state level, it is historically complicated. We always talk about the federal goes one way and you have a patchwork with the 50 states, but this is just on steroids at this particular moment. It's worse than it's ever been. And then, as you and I discussed in preparation as well, Gregory, the word sustainability has become part of this political polarization. And as I told you, I reframe it in terms of talking efficiency and resiliency. But sustainability is just, it's not the word to use at this moment when you talk to, when you're interacting with policymakers in terms of conversations. And so that's, I think, is the real challenge. A high degree of volatility, a high degree of uncertainty and guidance, basically. And then, unfortunately, these issues have been caught up in the overall country's political polarization. And that's not a good thing. It catches more headlines, but it makes it inherently more difficult to move the needle positively.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Reid, do you see this too? Like, given what Michael and Maria were just talking about, is there a certain vernacular that you have to use? Is there a certain way you have to position, the products and services that you sell?
100%. I think over the last 2 years, customers have started needing to think more about the future and the long-term aspect of the projects that they're trying to implement, whether it's just starting off on their electrification journey and putting in their first 2 chargers. Well,
Mhm.
the near-term future is uncertain, so you have to think about phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4. And so when you're going from 2 chargers to 20 chargers to 40, and thinking about the other implications that has on your business, like the rising cost of energy, then there's just so many other uh, things to think about, right? So it adds a lot of confusion to the overall scenario.
Yeah. And I'll throw this out to the group. When you interact with your customers or your clients or whoever that might be, what sorts of things do they refer to? Like what sorts of real sort of tangible things do they say, I need help with this, help me navigate through this or guide me through, these hurdles that I'm facing on a day-to-day basis.
I think in both PowerFlex business and Maria's business on the inspiration mobility side, being service providers, our customers are coming to us because they don't know how to get where they need to go, right? And so they're looking to us to provide that guidance, provide the roadmap, and like clarity, right? So it's really on us. It's on us to be like experts in our own little specific piece of it. And this is why partnerships and working together is really important, because everybody can't do anything, or everything. Everybody
Mhm.
can't do everything.
Absolutely. 100% agree with Reid in that we really have to have our own little kingdoms in which we are 100% the experts in that space. Part of it has to do, I think, both from marketplace and internal challenges, as well as some regulatory challenges when we're talking about sustainability, even if we're looking at it through an efficiency and resiliency lens, like Michael said. Um, Both Reid and I decode bureaucracy. I mean, policy and incentive programs are written for attorneys and legislative assistants and not fleet operators. So turning that government speak into fleet speak is really, really important to help fleet managers understand where they're going with some of these things that are out in the marketplace right now. And then a lot of the barriers that our customers face are internal. Siloed departments, misaligned KPIs, decision bottlenecks, and data silos as well too. You're stuck with legacy information systems that just cannot give you the data across the levels that you need. And oftentimes, I tell folks, your biggest challenge probably sits 2 rows over and not in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. It sounds, given what Reid just said, and you just said the kingdoms all coming together. This is all very Game of Thrones, isn't it? Yeah, we've got to come together. Michael, you're a pretty important cog in this wheel. Like you're basically, the messenger, taking all the things that Maria and Reid are talking about to the policymakers and helping them understand. Like, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's I think I mentioned this before with you. One of the simplest ways to describe advocacy is, it's about being a good communicator and a good educator, and that requires you to be a good storyteller. And the rest is tactics and plan and what audience with what message. But it's always about improving the narrative on behalf of the clients. And that's one of the reasons why I really like representing fleet managers, I have to say, because it's very straightforward and it is very effective when the policymakers understand where I'm coming from in that regard. And fleet
Mhm.
managers only want to be compliant. And in order to be compliant, they want a clear and feasible pathway to being that way. They want to fully support a cleaner environment because they live in the environment that they deliver essential services to, right? So, they never look to throw bombs and they're technology neutral. They just, like in the case of the county of San Bernardino a couple years ago, they want to be able to fight the fire in the mountains while there's a blizzard and deliver food and water as a lifeline to people trapped in the mountains. And that's what they want to do. And that's it. Job number one, the only job. So that's very refreshing in an advocacy space because a lot of people have selfish skin in the game, so to speak, and they do want to slow things down and they do want to politicize things and they do want to blow it up. And, there's a lot of maneuvering going on there. But in this case, we always approach everything in trying to improve it and make it realistic timeline, flexibility to continue to deliver essential services. The problem here is that this fleet perspective has not been heard anywhere near enough. I mentioned I did transportation policy for over 20 years. I did the surface transportation reauthorization. I did all of this that really impacted fleets, but we never heard the word fleet. And when we thought about fleets, we thought about trucking. And we've really been trying to grapple with this on behalf of NAFA to get this essential perspective out, because fleets are really the harbinger of problems between infrastructure, transportation, and environmental policy. They're on the cutting edge and they encounter these difficulties first.
Yeah, I can totally second what you're saying about, fleet managers, fleet operator, anybody in the CV space. I come out of a passenger car and it's so convoluted. You're trying to decipher and understand what the individual wants, what that human being wants. When it comes to fleet, it is so cut and dry, exactly what they want, how to get it, what's important. It's great. I have to say it's a great space to be in. So another thing that I wonder about is from the, again, sort of customer or client side. And again, this is for everybody. Is your advice to them at this time in this space to, pump the brakes? Is it to wait, pause and see what happens? Or is it that, hey man, just go, like, keep doing what you're doing and it will help you get through this and it'll all shake out? Like, for each of you, what's your sort of guidance to the end user?
For me, and for inspiration, pause and see is not a strategy. We can't just stop and wait for things to shake out, because otherwise life is then happening to you, and you're reacting rather than being proactive about things. My advice is move with intent, but really stay adaptable. Don't fixate on one thing. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Run your pilots, capture your real world data, refine your playbook. Those that win in the end aren't the ones that are going to get it perfect. They're the ones who learn the fastest. And Reid, I'm sure you see this in your space as well too. The folks that are frozen by inaction are the ones that end up having the worst experience, because they just can't pick a direction and go with it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, granted, we do have some of the. Maybe I would say we're kind of lucky to have some of these very large and sophisticated customers that are going all in, right? So we get to experience that side of the coin. But for the smaller operators, like, it's not necessary to go full force and continue all momentum. But Maria, you can't stop, right? Because paralysis by analysis is bad for every business. Making educated decision, relying on your service providers like Inspiration Mobility and PowerFlex to guide you through, because we have a policy team that's totally up to snuff on all of the things that are happening. I'm not the guy that's at the cutting edge of that, but we have the team that's there to help guide our customers to make the right decisions and plan for their future. So again, it comes back to that being like planning for the future, not just the project today, but the next 5 projects. These infrastructure projects take a long time. We're talking about needing utility infrastructure upgrades. There's big pieces of switch gear. All of this stuff takes a long time to get to a site and be built. And so, from the project perspective, we're not talking about something that happens overnight anyway. And so if we're talking about multiple phases of these large projects, we are planning for something that's beyond this administration or beyond the current state of play.
Now, all this makes perfect sense to me if I look at it through the lens of enterprise size operations, like big operations. I know a lot of the people on this call watching this session right now, they're dealers, and they don't always deal with someone who's got a fleet of 1,000 units. They might be dealing with someone who's got 5 trucks or 10 vans. How do we, as sort of the people in the industry with the oversight, how do we help them? Like, what is it that we tell a dealer to tell their customer for all the same things that we're talking about?
I would like to tell all of the dealers on the call to please don't shy away from this, like the EV tidal wave that's coming. Education is key. There's like a lot of this cart before the horse hesitation. People are seeing that the EV adoption forecasts this year are not as sunny as they were last year, right? But we still sold 1 million EVs in the United States in the last year, right? All of those vehicles need a place to charge. Like there's momentum. So I think education, making sure that your salespeople are fully trained and confident in selling the benefits of switching to electric vehicles is hugely important, because the small guys, everyone's hungry for knowledge, right? And so if you have knowledge, then it's best to share it. And salespeople they love to talk. So yeah, equip them with the knowledge.
1 in 5 vehicles sold in the United States is a fleet vehicle, and the vast majority of those vehicles are not necessarily for large enterprise fleets. We're talking about the HVAC companies, the plumbers that are local in your areas, and they're going to go to the dealers first, obviously. Dealers are very much uniquely positioned. They're the front line of customer trust. They're the best ones that can get the information out there to the vast majority of fleet and commercial drivers. The best dealers aren't waiting for OEMs to dictate the playbook. They're building that kind of EV readiness. They're creating the charging partnerships. They're becoming consultants instead of just order takers. If a dealership thinks like a mobility enabler, they're going to win the long game, because this is a long game. This is not just a one and done, or a situation where people are going to hope it's going to go away. There's been enough change at this point in time. The second go round of electrification has really stuck at this point. And this doesn't just help the consumers. When dealerships are on board like this, it really helps fleets as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Michael, how do you go about representing, like in that same vein, how do you go about representing the little guy? Because, again, you're sort of the key conduit to everything that's going on in the marketplace. And as we know, the vast majority of fleets are small fleets. They're the little guys. So how do you get that voice heard, and how do you extract it yourself?
Well, I think, first of all, pretty much every client that I can think of off the top of my head when it comes to associations, there's always been some time spent. Obviously, you have all the big members, and they get plenty of attention, but they're important. But there's always been a focus, at least for me and also in my policy work in general, on small and medium size. Because number one thing that we know without a doubt is that the small and medium sectors are the engines of innovation historically. The data documents it within the US. So, you get experimenting around fleets. You don't necessarily see that happening at the largest scale amongst the largest fleets. And I think that's an important message, because a lot of times when you're talking to a policymaker, they'll recognize big names and they'll go, oh, and then they'll understand they have a fleet. But, they don't think so much about the city of fleet, right? Or the school system's fleet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an important opportunity to say a lot of good things are happening there, and one of the examples I like to use here a lot, and this is not dependent on the size of the fleet at all, but I have so many examples with NAFA fleet manager members that they began efforts at decarbonization before there was any sort of regulatory stick whatsoever. And now that's a point that I want to come back to, in that we've been kind of illustrating what the role of fleet manager means. And to me, the question of, do you stop sustainability? And obviously, I prefer for appropriate framing to stay away from that. Does a fleet manager stop working on efficiency and resiliency? The answer is no. They want clear and feasible pathways to being compliant, deliver their essential services, but make it delivery as efficient and as resilient as possible. And that is the job, and it should never stop. Many years ago, when there was a global recession, I was speaking to a CEO of a large machinery manufacturing company. And everybody was talking about hedging and cutting lines and not starting new market penetration efforts and everything, and hunkering down. And I asked him, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, my job as CEO is to be growth minded, even in the worst of possible environments. And I think that was very illustrative. And here, the fleet manager, it's part of their job description. And, I just try to make these points clear. And, I think they resonate when you articulate them the right way.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great point, and we see this all the time, right? It's during recessions, during marketplace contractions. It's those companies that are the most brave that end up reaping the most rewards once the market bounces back. Just really quickly, so this I guess would be for you and for Maria. Can you just give a quick oversight into what NAFA is and what it does? Because I'm not sure everybody listening right now is aware.
Absolutely. I'm going to defer to the board president on that one, Maria.
No problem. Taking off my inspiration hat very quickly and putting on my NAFA hat. NAFA is the world's preeminent association of fleet managers. It is in our title, NAFA Fleet Management Association. We have over 3,300 individual members representing corporate, state, local fleets. We also have fleet managers that represent departments in the federal government as well, too. And our job is to provide the NAFA is there to provide education. It's there to provide a sounding board for fleet managers to get together and crowdsource solutions to problems. But also a very, very big part of our mandate is to make sure that the voice of the fleet manager is heard in the halls of Congress, in the halls of the executive branch agencies, in the state houses across the country. And our partnership with Hillstaffer has been, for the last 3 years, an incredible asset to fleets all over the country in making sure that all of the rules and regulations that are put into place have some sort of fleet manager influence on them. Michael, I know you're going to talk about CARB and California at some point in time in this discussion here, but without the ability of NAFA to have those discussions with the CARB members and senators and legislators in the state of California, CARB's decisions could have been even worse than they were. So it's all about making sure that real world applications are brought into the legislative aspect of this.
Okay, got it. Now, Reid touched on this briefly, but you stated it more directly that the dealerships are the people on the front line when it comes to motivating others in the marketplace. They're the first point of contact. We have not really talked about, even as an industry, or addressed this notion of educating dealers on what the next necessary steps are, what information to have, how to prepare themselves, how to prepare their customers. We always talk about it from the OEM side, like, oh, the OEM is going to take care of the dealer and let them know what's coming down the pipe and what. Can we all just talk a little bit about, as associations, as advocates, as vendors, how do we go about bringing the dealer up to speed and all of their people?
From my standpoint, FMCs work with dealerships in lots of different ways. They work with the larger dealerships that are much more fleet-minded, and then when there are fleets that are in more remote corners of the United States, they work with a lot of smaller dealerships that are still family-run operations rather than owned by any significant corporation. And I think at the end of the day, it is incumbent upon those that are working in this kind of efficiency space is they are not just vendors, they are partners. And we need to educate them as much as we need to educate the fleet managers. For us, when we have a partner that is as well educated as us, that can speak to the individual that's coming to pick up that vehicle and use that vehicle on a regular basis to do their job, if we can give them the information they need to put that vehicle and what that vehicle can do in a good light, we've done not just them a service, but we've done ourselves a service because it makes it easier on us the next time around.
Do you think it's also incumbent upon associations like the one that you manage to give them tools to help them, to help them with their clients and customers? But like part of the next question that I had was, what are the vehicles that do you think should be in place to help do this? Like, it's easy for us to sit here and say, you know what, we need to bring these dealers all up to speed, but at some point it needs to become really real. So how do we do that in a really effective way?
Absolutely. Michael, I'm actually going to toss this back to you because I think you've got a couple of great stories around um, congressional visits to actual locations where the representatives and everything can see things happening, but that also dovetails nicely with dealerships. Because again, we've got a number of folks that are on Capitol Hill that are dealers and have and or own dealership groups, and making that point to them at the highest level will help everything trickle down to the boots on the ground.
Yes, thanks, Maria. I mean, there's a whole world of things we can do here, but I'm just going to focus on a couple, very specific. Recently, I did an event in Somerset, New Jersey, with Bob at Fleet Forward program, and I was just doing an update like I normally do about the regulatory landscape and laws, and it also obviously had a specific focus on New Jersey. And I put together a one-page handout that I distributed as part of my presentation that had all of the current state incentive programs in New Jersey that are available. So yes, it is a historic moment of complexity within the patchwork that I talked about earlier, but you can still do your homework and find out what is available. And I think this goes directly to Maria's point of you're not just a dealer, you have to be much more of a consultant as well. So with the historic situation, you have to spend a little more time on your own. If you can't do it through a membership association, to come up with information like that. And your staff need to understand the importance of all that. So that's one item. The other thing that I know where Maria was going is that I encourage facility visits. As a congressional staffer, I've been on both sides of facility visits for years, and I know it's always a value add. And what do I mean by that? Well, a dealership reaches out to their elected and appointed officials, or even their regulators, and they invite them to come to the dealership so that they can educate them about their job, their dealership, the community they serve, and how they serve. And oh, by the way, talk about their accomplishments, decarbonization or whatever it might be, but then also their challenges with the current environment. And you maintain that relationship, not just with the elected principals, but do it with staff. As a former staffer, I can tell you that matters and it is important. But these things are very beneficial. And we've done a number of them at the federal level on behalf of NAFA members, like with the chair of a committee in the House, a chair of a subcommittee in the House around vehicle data access and catalytic converter theft. But then also in California, we did it with the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee and the chair of the lower house Transportation Committee. And it was really, and we also did one within Sacramento County just for key committee staff there in California. So I encourage, the dealers to think about these possibilities.
Michael, do you ever reach back out to talk about what the results were? You know what
Oh,
I mean?
almost always. I wouldn't really be doing my job if I didn't do a
Mhm.
debrief. And I also wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't reiterate, make sure you follow up and say thank you, and maintain that relationship because they expect me to do that. At
Mhm.
least some, but they don't all, you don't want to just stop at that because you've opened a door. It is a possible relationship. And what do you do with relationships? You cultivate them. You invest more into it. It's an ongoing conversation. And that way you can become like a credible resource for them, for the legislator, for the regulator to reach back out and become more informed about where things are from where you sit.
Yeah.
There,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maria.
no, I apologize, Gregory. There is, to not leave Reid out of this discussion here, there is a way for dealerships to be able to become a one-stop shop for those smaller fleets that might not just need one or two charging ports available, for example, for electric vehicles, if that's the decision that they've made to go down. This is not, we're not talking about, large depots where they're charging 150 vehicles. Companies like PowerFlex, I mean, as long as it's a depot or workplace charging solution, you're going to have that conversation. And if dealerships can be kind of the the nexus of all of that information. A fleet guy's going to come up and I need to order 5 vehicles and they're like this. I need to have charging in place. Do you have anybody I could talk to? Having that list of folks like Reid and other EVSE providers and other efficiency providers, and even your organization, Gregory, it makes it a lot easier to be able to say, I'm your trusted resource. I have the ability to be able to help you navigate these very, very murky waters right now and go down the path of making your fleet as efficient and resilient as possible.
Right.
Yeah. Could I? So yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, people are good at what businesses are good at what they are good at, right? PowerFlex, we have a channel partner program, these referral programs, and we've created these programs specifically for the dealers and the fleet management companies that have relationships with the fleets, because it's a big ecosystem, a lot of moving parts. For you to utilize your relationships with your fleet customers, but pull in the experts like PowerFlex on the back end to support your sales efforts, to support the electrification at scale, going from pilots to scale. Those are the types of collaborations that we're trying to create.
Now, Reid, I quoted from you the other day in a meeting. I didn't use your name, sorry, I took all the credit for it. But I was telling everybody that, having had our conversation prior to our presentation, you were talking about how there's still all sorts of subsidies and grants that still exist, especially at the state level. And all of that is sort of overshadowed by all the noise that we hear in the news and in popular culture or social media saying how all these federal grants and all the federal money is vanishing. Can you talk a little bit about the stuff that's still out there and up for grabs, because it can certainly facilitate the adoption of sustainable vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking about it as Michael was talking about the resources that he was creating. Incentives help drive these infrastructure projects forward. Without them, a lot of the times they're dead in the water. And there's incentives from a plethora of different organizations, right? There are these national funds that were frozen. They keep showing up and different things pop up and disappear all the time. But at the local and regional level, every time a business pays their utility bill, there's a little portion of their utility bill they're paying that goes into like a rebate fund. And so all of these incentives that are available from your local utility companies, to help pay for the infrastructure projects, and it's all ratepayer funded. So those programs aren't going away. So whether it's they're called make ready programs that help cover like building the actual infrastructure to bring power from your electric panel out to your parking lot where the chargers are going to be installed. Oftentimes that requires trenching and a new cable and conduit. All of these different costs that aren't thought about when the fleet manager is ordering a vehicle. But are very necessary for powering that vehicle and filling up the battery every night. So long story short, there's incentives from the utilities that can help pay for all of those funds. There's also state programs from like the Department of Environmental Protection in different states that have grant programs that you can apply to. I think, Michael, you were talking about in New Jersey. New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection has a great program. It adds an additional, I think, $4,000 or $6,000 per charging port. And you can add that on top of the Make Ready program from the utility. And so when we're working with a service provider like PowerFlex or Inspiration Mobility, we've got experts that know how to stack these programs on top of each other, figure out all the intricacies of the programs and how to really benefit and maximize the incentives that are available to reduce the cost of the projects. If the project isn't being driven forward by some sustainability goal and it really is dependent on ROI and everything penciling out, the incentives are usually what helps it get over the finish line.
To piggyback on that, we all heard the discussion, and we've just all passed September 30th, where the 45W tax credits for the vehicles have essentially gone away. And that 45W tax credit is the commercial clean vehicle tax credit, where it allowed anywhere from $7,500 all the way up to $40,000 of tax credits for commercial vehicles placed into service. A lot of the states are stepping up to take and fill that gap that has been left by the federal government at this point in time. So it's not just the infrastructure, it's the vehicles themselves. And then when you put that all together and look at the total cost of ownership from the perspective of vehicle plus the infrastructure, those incentives can be a game changer for a lot, especially if you're focused on the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we're talking about this because, again, sort of word on the street, even in industry that I'm in, you know, the popular mindset is, oh, everybody's just gonna to bail on this stuff because there's no money available anymore. Meanwhile, there's all sorts of money available. You know, I don't mean to overblow it, but certainly not everything has dried up. I think
Correct.
part of the challenge, though, is, this every single time I hear this, it's just so analogous to what goes on when you're a college kid, and there's a help me out. It's a scholarship available. There's all sorts of money there, but you got to go put in a little bit of effort to
Mm-hmm.
go and extract it. I
Yeah, and
guess
they
the
always make a
question.
point that there's scholarship money every year that goes unused, right?
Yes.
Unused every
Yeah,
year, right?
yeah.
So the question is, where does someone start to? Because all you've talked about, all three of you have talked about, is the vast amount of resources that are available and how it makes sense to keep going. So where does somebody start to go and start to, number one, educate themselves, and number two, extract what's available?
From a
Well,
self-serve, oh,
no, go ahead,
sorry.
Marie. No, go ahead.
From a self-serving perspective, work with partners that understand this ecosystem. Work with PowerFlex. Work with Inspiration Mobility. Get involved in your local fleet management association. We have regional meetings and local networking groups that can happen there. But if you're just really looking at kind of wrapping your arms around what's out there and what's available, the Department of Energy has a website called the Alternative Fuels Data Center. It's afdc.doe.gov that will give you a listing. It is not pretty. You will have to do some digging, but you will be able to see the incentives that are available for different types of alternative fuels, including plug-in hybrids as well as EVs, and see what's out there and available in each jurisdiction. It oftentimes even have information from the utility companies as well. But again, it's written in government speak. It's not written in fleet speak, and you need somebody to help you translate that.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just plug another service provider out there that kind of specializes in this space called BrightSwitch. It's a platform that we've used historically at PowerFlex, where they've got a plugin, and you can just put in a zip code or put in a little bit of information about a project, and it'll give you very quickly all of the incentives available for that specific location. And so, as a large dealership group who's looking to provide these types of tools into the hands of your salespeople, there are tools out there that you can subscribe to that can help get the job done much quicker.
Now, if we think about sort of the fundamental premise of this whole session, which was, why does sustainability still make sense? If I put that to you as like a simple question, what would each of your answers be? Maybe Reid, you kick it off.
Sure. So I think one of the largest factors that every commercial business is going to deal with, especially if we're really highlighting fleet electrification and a growing electric fleet at a depot for let's say, is the increasing cost of energy, right? There's momentum. The vehicles are electrifying, and today with low costs of energy, the total cost of ownership looks really good. But as your cost of energy is going to double in the next 2 years, now the TCO and ROI numbers are starting to change. That's when you then again take it to the next level and think about how you can add some solar on your roof or a battery in the parking lot that can help utilize either clean electricity that you're generating from the sun or low cost electricity from your local utility when you've got tariffs that are changing. There's just using energy management and software is really important. And I think that these are things that are going to be major impacts if you're not already dealing with it. And across the country, rates are changing. So thinking about how your business is changing and how those changes are impacting your electricity bills over the next 5 years uh, and taking these measures, because these projects take more than a year to implement. So like doing the work now to think about the future of your business and the cost of your energy is extremely important to maintain your bottom lines.
Michael, what's your take on this?
Well, I kind of already said it, but I think it's worth reiterating. Go back to that example of the CEO during a global recession. Job number one for a CEO is to be growth minded at all times, even in the worst set of circumstances. For a fleet manager, I believe part of job one and the only job there is, as we said, continue to be as efficient as you can with your fleet assets, and be as resilient. Do what you can do in terms of being a good steward, decarbonize, all this type of stuff. So I don't think that stops. I think what we've concluded is it is not at a complete standstill. It's at a historic level of complexity, but there are still options available. So what that means is you have to spend a little more extra time than you normally would as a fleet manager on still maintaining this part of your job, is what I would suggest. And I'm going to put a plug in. Both Reid and Maria gave some good sites, and I think that's excellent. But if you're not part of an association, I would recommend that you join one. And I'm also going to say, I've worked for all kinds of associations, professional and trade. I worked at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So I know this association landscape pretty well. And I have to take my hat off to NAFA. They cloud source information amongst themselves outside their normal working hours. California helping somebody in New Jersey, all over the place with electrification. They do it like no other association I've ever encountered. So that alone these days, given what I've said, is a huge value, right? You get alerts, you get that networking, crowdsourcing of data and help, and I know it can make a huge difference.
It's like Michael set me up for my point on this, and we didn't even plan this ahead of time. We're finally seeing collaboration. I mean, sustainability has been a part of the fleet landscape for a number of years. We can go back to the early 90s when compressed natural gas and LPG and ethanol and all of those things were coming into play. And it wasn't necessarily called sustainability. It was called reduction in petroleum usage. And it was hopefully to make us a little bit more, a little less reliant on Middle Eastern oil reserves. But now we're finally seeing collaboration, and not just collaboration within fleets and amongst fleet managers, but collaboration is starting to happen between OEMs, utilities, fleet managers that share their data, and not just their vehicle data, but their charging data and their wins and losses and their experiences with putting all of these measures into place. But it's still not enough. We're kind of in survival mode, and everybody's protecting their corner because it is a scarcity of resources right now. But at the end of the day, collaboration is the only thing that scales. The more openly we share both the wins and the screw ups, the faster the whole ecosystem matures, the faster that pricing comes down, because now we've got scale. So pricing will obviously go down, and the more sense this makes, even more so than it does today.
What would you say is the best way to cut through all of the distraction, the politicizing of information? There's a lot of things that I think make people worry. Like if we look at it on the marketplace, there's a lot of reticence, there's a lot of nervousness because there's just so much noise in there. Like there's a lot of talking. And to be honest, like even on the OEM side, we hear companies shifting focus, like, like all the, EVs going away. Now let's talk hybrid. Like there's a lot of different things happening that the average customer or consumer has to process and then decide to do something or not. From each of your perspectives, is there a way to cut through all of that to the chase to help someone understand, hey, listen, this is the next best thing, or this is the thing that you should be thinking of and what you should do?
It's for me, it is about small changes versus big pivots. Make those small changes to make the fleets more efficient. Process tweaks, increasing your MPG and fuel efficiency. If you can't immediately move towards electrification, do all of the things that make your fleet more efficient without looking at from a sustainability lens, but understanding that the sustainability lens, by reducing carbon emissions and moving towards alternative propulsion systems, is ultimately the way you're going to have the greatest impact. Again, those small changes that, giving drivers incentives to drive these vehicles if they're a little bit reticent to do so, making sure your data is absolutely clean. We've all heard the term garbage in, garbage out. We don't want that. We want to have the best data going into the system so you can get the best data coming out to allow you to make really precise decisions about how your fleet moves forward. But you also have to have the bigger picture in mind. If you don't point those small changes to a larger end result at a radically different end state, it's just making an old existing model better. And I'm not sure that we need to make this model any better than it already is. Again, this is the game. It's a game of inches that leads into a game of yards that leads to the touchdown. You've got to make sure you're going in the right directions. You got to make sure you're taking small steps, but using a lot of deliberate intent. It's got to be in service of a larger vision. And if you don't have that larger vision, you're just taking steps that don't go anywhere. You could be going in circles.
I'll piggyback on that. As the other two are thinking about this, I'll piggyback on that because I did a presentation yesterday and it said the exact same thing. The notion here is that because of the scale and scope of this idea of sustainability, it's so new and so huge, everybody thinks that they have to make these huge pivots, that the business has to fundamentally change the way that it operates and how it gets there. Meanwhile, it's not. Like, the most successful businesses are making those small changes. It's little things that they do consistently and across the organization that move it, like that turn the ship, not these huge things that are disruptive. Michael, Reid, do you have any thoughts on this?
My answer was going to be, I think, a little bit different. Because
different is good. Different is good.
I mean, it's a chaotic.
No, here, let me just turn them off right now. Stop. No, go ahead.
No, it's a chaotic ecosystem that we're selling into, right? And as I said in the beginning, when someone's looking for a solution, they come to us because they don't know how to get to where they want to go, right? And so in this time, what I've realized is right now, people are also, our customers, businesses are very slow to make a decision. They're hesitant. And it's because the future is uncertain, right? So my goal in working with our customers is really to put them at ease, right? Like PowerFlex, we're owned by EDF. We've got a very strong balance sheet. We were going to be here for a long time, and we're sure of it. And we've got a whole plan. And so there's a lot of companies that are in our space that a lot of companies that went out of business in the last 12 months, and we're seeing that a lot of other competitors in this space, have rocky paths ahead. So just working to put customers at ease and tackle big challenges one thing at a time. Because making a huge decision, those aren't happening as fast as they were happening 2 years ago for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. And I think that echoes actually what Maria just said too, which is, this idea of tackle one thing at a time, be focused, be diligent about it, I think is kind of, a similar thought where you don't have to swallow the whole pill all at once. You can take steps and get there. And, what you're doing at PowerFlex is that we're going to reassure you and we're going to help you get there one step at a time. Michael, what would you say?
Well, I definitely agree with the small changes at a time. The other thing, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The other thing I would say, we all have been speaking about have a plan B, And I do think that one specific example where you can have that plan B and also be doing these small steps at the same time is to keep your procurement and contracts flexible. If there's any sort of additional flexibility in there so that you can adapt with any shifting mandates. And of course, we've been talking about maximizing your incentives and getting aware of that. But another thing I would say is invest in your workforce. This is kind of one of these small things, but you never lose out by upskilling. And I think that's important. The other thing I would say is maybe think a little more creatively and do some things around pilots in a staged sort of way, but not overcommit too soon. And so these are, some other options that you can think about based on what we've been talking about today.
Right. Michael, Maria, Reid, I want to thank everybody so much for being here today. Super provocative and insightful conversation. And hopefully people who are listening can actually take positive steps in the future, taking advantage of all the information that you provided. Thanks so much, and look forward to talking to you all again at some point.
Thanks, Gregory.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you all.